I was 23 when this happened, still pretty green in construction, still bouncing from job to job wherever the company sent me. Cheyenne was supposed to be an easy stop. 3 nights, in and out. My foreman got the last room at a decent chain hotel, so he tossed me the company card and told me to find something cheap. You'll survive. So I ended up at a cheap roadside motel off the highway. You know the type: big peeling sign, half the letters faded, parking lot lights buzzing louder than they shine. It was already dark, parking lot empty except for one pickup that looked abandoned. The lobby smelled like old coffee and something sweet, trying to cover it up. The manager came out of the back room the second the bell rang. Thin guy, late 50s, stiff smile. His eyes didn't blink enough and they stayed on me way too long, more like he was studying than greeting me. You needing a room tonight? He asked. Yeah, just for a few days. He slid over an old guest book. Paper. Actual pen. While I filled it out, his eyes didn't leave me. Not my hands, not my ID, me. When I finished, he held the key in his hand a beat too long before passing it to me. Pipes are old, he said. If you notice any leaks, even small ones, call me and I'll come check. Got it, I said, pretending I wasn't freaked out. Room 12 was halfway down the walkway. Curtains shut tight, carpet stiff under my boots. Everything looked a little damp, like the room hadn't truly dried in years. I checked the locks. Deadbolt worked, chain was intact, though the door didn't sit perfectly in the frame. I kicked off my boots and was scrolling through my phone when the knock came. Through the peephole, I saw the manager holding a ring of keys like he expected to use them. Everything okay? I called. Just checking for leaks, he said. Mind if I take a quick look? It had barely been an hour since check-in, but I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. No leaks here. He smiled. Better to be sure. I should have said no. Instead, trying to be polite, I unhooked the chain. He walked in and didn't look at a single pipe. Sink, shower, floor, nothing. He looked at my stuff, my boots, my jacket, my bag half unzipped on the chair. You staying alone? He asked. Yep, I said. Another slow nod. All right then, let me know if anything changes. When he left, I locked the door and sat still for a while. I tried to tell myself he was just awkward and lonely. Small towns are full of people who overshare or hover too much, but around 12:30 that night, he knocked again. Same rhythm, same keys in his hand. I didn't open the door. He leaned forward so close his face filled the peephole. Any leaks show up? He asked through the door. Any noise? I can check the bathroom real quick. No, I said firmly. Everything's fine. He stayed there long enough that I could hear him breathing through the door. Then he finally walked off. I listened until his footsteps disappeared. I locked both locks, pulled a chair under the knob, and slept like I was waiting for something to happen. Morning came too fast. I had to be on site early, so I hopped in the shower hoping it would wake me up. The fan in the bathroom buzzed loud enough to cover most sounds. Steam fogged the mirror. Then, under the noise of the water, I heard something metallic. A tiny click. I turned off the shower immediately. The fan droned on, but beneath it, another sound. A faint scrape of metal on metal. The chain lock. I wrapped a towel around my waist and pressed my ear to the bathroom door. The room beyond felt wrong. I cracked the door open half an inch. From that angle, I could see the front door. Deadbolt still locked, but the chain was pulled tight. A pale hand was hooked through the gap, fingers working slowly, trying to lift the chain without making noise, trying to slip it free. I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. Hey, I yelled. The hand jolted back like I'd shocked him. The chain snapped against the metal. The manager's face appeared in the gap, startled, guilty, then instantly rearranged into a calm he definitely did not feel. "I thought you'd left already," he said. "I was checking on a leak report." "You tried to come in while I was in the shower," I cut in. "Back away from the door." He stared at me for a moment. Then, without a word, he stepped back. His footsteps hurried down the walkway even though he tried to make them sound slow. I locked the chain again. Then the deadbolt. Then I shoved the dresser as close as I could to the door. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I called the front office. He answered immediately. "Front desk. You need to stay away from this room," I said. "I'm calling the police." "Sir," he said using this soft, reasonable tone, "I told you, routine maintenance. I knocked. You didn't answer. You touched the lock." Silence. "Then I'll make a note on your file." I hung up and called 911. 2 officers showed up within 15 minutes. I told them the whole thing. They exchanged looks I didn't love, the kind where they're trying to decide whether you're exaggerating. They talked to the manager while I watched from behind the curtain. He gestured a lot, pointed at the building, shook his head like, "This kid is overreacting." When the officers came back, the older one said, "He claims he knocked multiple times, got no response, and believed there might be a plumbing problem." "In what universe does plumbing require undoing the chain lock?" I asked. "He shouldn't have touched it," the officer said. "We agree with you there. But unless he entered the room legally..." "Yeah," I said. "I get it." They offered to help me relocate. I packed my bag faster than I've ever packed anything in my life. The motel refused a refund. The manager didn't show his face again. Some younger woman took my key and slid the receipt toward me without making eye contact. I ended up crashing on a double bed with a coworker for the rest of the trip. I didn't care. Anywhere else felt safer. That was years ago, but I still won't shower in a motel without checking the lock twice. I still think about that trip every time I stay in a motel with outside-facing doors. I was 22, a broke college musician tagging along on a spring break trip with 3 friends. We were splitting a cheap roadside motel room in Daytona Beach and calling it a vacation. I arrived early because I had a gig the night before in another city, so my whole plan was just check in, shower, nap, wait for the guys to show up after dark. The motel was exactly what you'd picture. 2 stories, pastel paint, loud AC units sticking out of windows, doors facing the parking lot. The pool was taped off with a laminated, temporarily closed sign that had definitely been there longer than temporary. The lobby clerk barely looked at me when I checked in, just slid the keycard across the counter. Room 214, 2nd floor. Inside the room, stiff bedspread, TV bolted down like I was going to steal it. I tossed my backpack and guitar case onto the bed and lay down to answer a few texts. By early evening, the place was filling up fast. From the walkway balcony, I watched groups of college kids arrive. Music blasting, people yelling to friends across the lot. Normal spring break chaos. And then I saw him. He didn't look like anyone else there. Older, late 30s, maybe 40s, dark hoodie, jeans, baseball cap pulled low. Not drunk, not rowdy, just there. And he was calmly testing door handles. Not knocking, not acting confused like someone who forgot their room number. Just walking the length of the 2nd floor corridor and giving each doorknob a gentle tug. A room number. Tug. Next room. Tug. Next room. Tug. Nobody else noticed. Everyone was too busy hauling coolers up the stairs or shouting across the parking lot. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he really was just lost. Maybe he was looking for a friend. But then I watched him skip the rooms where people were standing outside. Skip anyone who might see him. And he didn't knock once. Just moved with this steady, weird calm, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I stepped back into my room, shut the door, and made sure the deadbolt clicked. Then I slid the little metal security latch across, the one that always feels more symbolic than useful. When I peeked out the window again, he was 3 doors away. Then 2. He tested the room next to mine. Locked. He didn't react, didn't sigh, didn't shrug. He just stared at the crack between the door and the frame, like he was listening. Then he stepped in front of my door. I backed away from the window, staying out of sight. He didn't reach for the knob right away. Instead, he leaned forward. I didn't hear breathing. I didn't hear movement. Just a whisper, soft enough that I questioned if it was real. This one. 2 words, like he'd found something he'd been searching for. My whole body jolted like someone had snapped a cable inside me. I grabbed my wallet and phone with 0 hesitation. There was no thought process, no logic, just a deep, sharp instinct screaming that staying in that room was a bad idea. He still hadn't touched the handle, but I couldn't stand there waiting for him to make the first move. Every instinct I had was telling me to get out. Now. Before he decided to push things further. I didn't bother listening at the door again. I just unlocked everything as quietly as I could, took a breath, and yanked it open in one go. The guy was standing right there. His head snapped toward me, surprised, and before I even thought about it, I threw my weight into him. It wasn't some heroic tackle, more like a panicked shove, but it sent him stumbling backward. His feet tangled, and he hit the ground hard on his side. I didn't wait to see if he was getting up. I bolted. The walkway rattled under my footsteps as I tore down it, gripping the railing to swing myself toward the stairs. Behind me, I heard movement. Fast, messy, like he was scrambling to his feet. But I didn't look back. I just sprinted down the emergency stairwell, 2 steps at a time, and ducked behind the vending machines in the parking lot. From there, I had a clear angle to see part of the 2nd floor walkway. I crouched there, hands shaking around my phone, listening. Footsteps. They paused. I imagined him standing there, listening for movement, listening for me. Then the footsteps continued, heading toward the opposite staircase. And then, nothing. Silence, except for the muffled bass from someone's car and a group laughing across the lot. I called the front desk, trying to keep my voice level. "Hey, there's a guy testing doors on the 2nd floor," I said. He stopped at mine, whispered something. "I think he's looking for a room that's unlocked." The clerk sighed, not annoyed with me, just with the situation. "We'll send security to check it out." "Do you have cameras?" I asked. A pause. "Yeah, we'll take a look." Security didn't show, but police did, maybe 20 minutes later. By then, the guy was long gone. An officer took my statement by the cruiser. "What'd he do when he got to your door?" he asked. He whispered, "This one," like he was choosing something. The officer didn't laugh. He didn't even raise an eyebrow. "Happens sometimes," he said. "People walk motels looking for easy targets. It was a risky move, opening the door and going straight at him." The clerk finally came outside, rubbing his forehead. "We saw him on camera," he said. "He walked the whole balcony, tried a lot of handles." "Did he go into any rooms?" I asked. "No," the clerk said. "He only stopped like that at yours." That stuck with me. He didn't force any doors. Didn't break in anywhere else. He just walked the line of rooms and picked one. Mine. My friends eventually arrived to find me sitting on the curb with my bag packed and my guitar case next to me, refusing to go back inside. They joked about it later, but when I handed one of them the key card and said, "Check the camera footage," they stopped laughing. It's been years, but I still can't stay in a motel without double-checking the handle, the latch, the curtains, everything. Because sometimes danger doesn't kick down the door. Sometimes it just walks past a row of rooms, carefully testing handles, waiting to whisper, "This one," outside the right one. I spend more nights in motels than I do in my own bed. That's probably why I caught it so fast. When you hop between cities for work, you learn what normal looks like. Same fake wood furniture, same patterned bedspread, same cheap alarm clocks that blink 12 forever. Nothing about the place in Santa Fe stood out at first. Long drive, late check-in, tiny lobby that smelled like lemon cleaner over old smoke. The front desk clerk barely looked alive. He slid me the form, took my card, handed me a real metal key. Room 112, park in front. The room was no surprise, so I did my usual scan. Habit at this point. Door latch, good. Curtains, close fully. Bathroom, clean enough. No bugs, no stains I didn't want to think about. I set my phone on the nightstand and looked at the alarm clock. No time display, not blinking. Not dim, just off. Normally I'd ignore a dead clock, but when I nudged this one, it felt heavy. Motel clocks are usually cheap plastic. This felt solid, weighted. I picked it up. Heavier than any motel clock should be. The cord hanging behind it wasn't even plugged in. The prongs were cut off entirely. That's when my brain started whispering. Check it. An alert voice I developed after years of working with people in crisis. I turned it over. 4 tiny screws on the bottom. Not standard for a cheap clock. I pulled my small screwdriver from my work bag, something I carry for adjusting mobility equipment, and sat on the bed with the clock in my lap. Screw 1, screw 2, screw 3, screw 4. The back plate came off, and I knew immediately this wasn't a clock. No gears, no circuit board, no LED display. Just a small black cube with a pinhole lens. A hidden camera. I sat there for maybe 3 seconds, just letting the scene register. Then I put the back plate on loosely, just enough so it looked untouched, placed it exactly where it had been, grabbed my phone, and stepped outside the room. I called the front desk first. My mistake, maybe, but adrenaline makes you stick to protocol. Room 112, I said. There's a camera hidden inside the alarm clock. I'm calling the police. Silence. Then, stay right there, and he hung up. I called 911 next. The dispatcher told me not to go back inside, not to touch anything else. I stayed on the walkway, staring at the door. The manager hurried down the hall toward me, looking angry and confused. A camera? What camera? He pushed past me, opened the door, grabbed the clock, and flipped it over. When he saw the loose screws, he shot me a look. Part accusation, part denial. You opened this? Yes, I said. That's how I know there's a camera. Before he could argue, 2 police cars pulled in. Officers stepped out. One talked to me outside. The other went inside with the manager. I heard him say, "Yeah, that's a camera," followed by the scrape of furniture as he pulled the nightstand from the wall. Whatever the camera connected to was on the other side. Another room, a closet, who knows. They unplugged everything and bagged the clock as evidence. No other devices were in the room. If footage existed, it was wireless. The manager kept repeating, "Someone planted it, someone trying to frame us." But the officers didn't look convinced. Neither was I. They took my full statement at the station, start to finish, detail by detail. They dusted the clock but got no usable prints. Too many smudges. Cases like this don't end neatly. Someone violates your privacy, and unless they slip, unless they brag, unless they're stupid, they just vanish back into the world. The officers moved me to another motel for the night, one they trusted more. I checked everything in that room: sprinkler head, vent, lamps, picture frames. I unplugged that clock too. Didn't matter what brand it was. Hours later, just when the room finally felt still, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 4 words: loved having you here. No emoji, no name, no follow-up. Just that. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim. That feeling, being observed by someone you can't see, someone who is not done with you, sits in a place panic can't quite reach. I forwarded the message to the officer who'd taken my report. He called the number. It was either a burner or a VoIP. Dead end. They added it to the file. Told me again I'd done everything right. I finished my contract in Santa Fe, but I didn't sleep well for weeks. Now I rotate motels constantly. Never the same one twice if I can help it. I check every vent, every smoke detector, every clock, even in high-end hotels. Patients tell me all the time how hard it is to feel safe after someone takes that from you. I used to nod out of professional understanding. Now I nod because I know exactly what it feels like. Somewhere out there, there's a person who watched me through that fake clock, saw me notice it, watched me walk out the door, and then hours later, used a burner phone just to let me know they were watching. I still travel. I still stay in motels. But I don't think of the rooms as temporary homes anymore. They're stages. And I always assume someone is sitting in the dark waiting for the show. I'm a high school science teacher, not someone who goes looking for weird stories. So when I say this happened exactly as I'm about to tell it, I mean that in the most literal, observational way possible. This was in 2020. I was on a spring break road trip, the kind you take when you're tired of grading papers and think a change of scenery might reset your brain. I reached Lubbock late. The nicer hotels were booked, so I pulled into a budget roadside motel and figured one night wouldn't kill me. The check-in guy slid me a key card and said, "Room 118. I tossed my bag on the bed, pulled out my laptop, and realized immediately I needed an outlet that wasn't already cracked or loose. The only usable one was blocked by a heavy dresser. I tried to reason with myself, just move it, 1 inch. I hooked my fingers under the edge and shoved. The dresser scraped across the carpet. Dust puffed out behind it. And then I saw the outline of a door. A real narrow door, maybe half the width of a normal one, wedged directly behind the dresser. It had a small metal latch instead of a knob. If I hadn't needed that outlet, I never would have known it was there. I told myself it was just utility access. Motels have weird architecture, nothing dramatic. But something about the door felt wrong in a way I couldn't place. Still, curiosity won. I unlatched it and pulled. It opened inward. A cold draft pushed out. The space was pitch black. I stepped back, grabbed my phone, and shined the flashlight inside. The beam lit up a narrow passageway. Bare wood framing on one side, drywall on the other, scuffed plywood floor. The hallway led straight back for a few feet, then turned sharply out of sight. It wasn't tall enough for anyone to comfortably stand upright. As I lifted the light higher, I heard a sound. A quick, scraping shuffle, like hands or knees dragging over wood. coming from around that unseen corner. Then silence. Every scientific part of me wanted a rational explanation. Raccoon, wind, old pipes shifting. But the sound hadn't been random. It was like something pulling away from the light. I shut the door immediately and latched it. Then I shoved the dresser back against the wall, using my shoulder to wedge it tight. After that, I went straight to the front desk. "There's a door behind the dresser in my room," I said. "It opens into some sort of crawl space." I heard movement inside. The clerk took a long second before answering. "Behind the dresser?" "Yes, narrow door. Someone could fit back there." He shrugged. "Old building, maintenance access, probably nothing to worry about." "Does maintenance crawl around at night?" I pressed. Again, the shrug. "You want a different room?" I thought about repacking, moving the car, dealing with everything all over again. I was exhausted. So I said no, went back to 118, and reinforced the dresser like I was blocking a cave entrance. Suitcase in front of it, chair wedged sideways as an extra stopper. I checked the main door twice, turned out the lights, and lay in bed listening to the AC hum. Every creak in the room sounded like someone pressing a palm to the wall. Every pipe thump made me sit up and stare. I probably slept in 10-minute increments. At some point in the night, I woke to a soft, dull thud, almost like wood shifting. I held still, listening hard. Nothing followed it. Eventually, my breathing slowed again, and I drifted off. Morning sunlight made the whole situation feel exaggerated, like maybe I'd just been overtired. I got up, stretched, packed my things, grabbed my laptop, and then looked at the dresser. It wasn't where I'd left it. Not enough to scream intrusion, but enough that I noticed instantly, maybe an inch forward. The carpet pile showed a clean line where it had been pressed the night before. My suitcase, which I'd pushed right up against it, now had a small gap between it and the wood. The chair wedge had shifted slightly too. That woke me up faster than coffee. I pulled the dresser out again. Hard. I opened the hidden door just enough to check the latch. It was no longer hooked. There were smudges lower down on the doorframe. Someone had pushed on it from inside that passage. I didn't investigate further. I didn't shine my phone down the hallway again. I didn't want to know what lived beyond that turn in the dark. I shoved the dresser back, grabbed my bag, and checked out. "Everything okay?" the clerk asked, as casually as if we'd never spoken. "That room has a door someone is using," I said. "You should close it up, or at least be honest about who's back there." He just gave this small, flat smile. Old motels have quirks. Quirks. That was the word he chose. I got in my car and watched the row of identical doors as I pulled out. Each room with its own dresser, its own walls, its own potential hidden space inches from where guests sleep. I tell people now that I've stayed in a lot of motels since then. And it's true, but I never put furniture against a wall anymore. Because I don't want to find another hidden doorway. And I don't want to hear scraping on the other side of it ever again. I bartend in Reno, so I'm used to people breaking down. Crying after losing money, crying because their ex texted them, crying because tequila makes them philosophical. You learn to filter things out. But the crying I heard that night was different. It was 2019, and after a brutal double shift, I didn't trust myself to drive home. I grabbed a cheap motel room off the strip, neon sign buzzing, carpeting that felt damp no matter what, and an ice machine that sounded like it was coughing up gravel. Whatever, I just needed a bed. Room 214, top floor. When I walked past 215, the door next to mine, a do not disturb sign hung on it. I figured someone inside was sleeping off their own long night. Inside my room, tan walls, humming AC, stiff mattress. I locked the door, threw my keys on the table, and was about to shower when I heard it. Crying. Muffled, broken, coming from the wall shared with room 215. I paused, listening. It wasn't TV noise. This was someone trying hard not to be heard. Low, shaky breathing between the sounds. I stood there a minute, debating. People cry in motels. It's practically what they're built for. Finally, bartender instincts kicked in. We're trained to check on people falling apart. I called the front desk. Hey, I'm in 214. Someone in 215 sounds like they're crying pretty bad. Typing. A bored sigh. 215, the clerk said. No one's in that room. I'm telling you, someone's in there. No key was issued, he repeated. Are you sure it's not a TV? It's not a TV. He offered to listen from the hall, but he didn't sound like he planned on actually leaving his chair. Forget it, I said. I hung up and pressed my palm against the wall. You could feel faint vibrations from the crying. Whoever was in there was close. And then I made the mistake of putting my ear to the wall. The crying stopped instantly. Gone. Cut off mid-breath. I backed away from the wall, suddenly aware that if I could hear her, she could hear me. She probably heard me make the phone call. She probably heard my footsteps, maybe even my breathing. The clerk never came upstairs. No knock, no follow-up. Nothing. I tried to distract myself with TV, but couldn't focus. I stayed fully dressed on top of the covers. I might have slept 40 minutes, all broken. By dawn, I'd given up on sleep. I packed my bag, opened my door, and stepped into the cool morning air. As I turned toward the stairs, something made me look at room 215. Its door was open, just a few inches like an invitation. No housekeeping cart, no staff around. I should have walked away. Instead, I drifted toward it. Hello? I called softly. Nothing. I nudged the door with my fingertips. It swung open with a tired creak. The room was dim, curtains mostly drawn, lights off. No luggage, no clothes, no personal items. The air felt stale, untouched, except for the bed. The covers were pulled tight, perfectly smoothed, except for one thing. A deep, unmistakable human-shaped dent in the center of the mattress. A shape, as if someone had lain there for hours without moving. Shoulders, hips, the curve of legs, all pressed into the fabric. I didn't cross the threshold. I stood in the doorway, staring. If the room hadn't been rented, why was there a fresh dent? If housekeeping made the bed, why didn't it look flat? If no one had slept there, who did I hear? Footsteps approached from behind. Ma'am? The clerk called. I turned. He looked groggy, annoyed, like I'd interrupted his morning. You told me this room was empty, I said. It was, he shrugged. Housekeeping must have propped the door open. I stepped aside so he could see the bed. His eyes flicked to it, a single half second before he shrugged again. Mattress is old. They sag weird. That's not a sag, I snapped. That's someone. I heard someone crying in here for almost an hour. Sound travels, he said calmly. It stopped the exact second I put my ear to the wall. He didn't answer. Didn't even pretend to care. If you had noise issues, you could have asked to switch rooms, he said. We can't control what goes on in other units. There was no one in this unit, I reminded him. His mouth twitched. Exactly. That was it for me. I went back to my room, grabbed my bag, left my key on the table, and walked straight to my car. No checkout, No refund argument. I didn't even look back at the building. I drove 5 hours home in total silence. People always try to explain it away. Maybe housekeeping lay on the bed. Maybe someone snuck in. Maybe another room's noise bounced weird. Sure, maybe. But I know what I heard. Someone was in that room. Someone who stopped crying the instant they realized I was listening. Someone who left behind a perfectly shaped impression in a bed that was supposed to be untouched. And someone the motel didn't seem very eager to look for. If any part of these motel stories made you rethink your next road trip, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you're never alone for the next scare, and let me know which door you would have abandoned first. And if you think the only scary thing about thunderstorms is losing Wi-Fi, yeah, you definitely haven't seen the next video.